Living my bucolic life, free every city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and some spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful lighthouses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.
Morning, how are you guys today? I have been traveling a lot and I am back and I'm ready to get back into sewing. It's been a while. Today's project is going to be kind of a fun one. We are getting into summertime here, but honestly what I'm going to be doing is not so much a summertime thing. Let me explain. Here it is. What I see with this is bathing suit cover-up, all right? But they have a longer version. And the fabrics that they call for are very sheer. They want gauze, challis, georgette, very, very thin things. Me personally, let me tell you my thoughts. Okay, I'm going to be doing this long one. I want it more like a cross between a robe and a house dress kind of thing. And it's got this cool drawstring waist where it is, oh, see if we can get you here where I can see it. I don't even know if you can see it. It's cinched in the waist with a drawstring, but the sleeves are held out separately. So it looks kind of neat, looks kind of interesting. What I'm going to be using, because I have a lot of it on hand, is some cotton home deck fabric. And it is just a plain green. Well, it's got a woven pattern into it. It's a plain green. It is this. But it looks, I've washed it on hot, I've dried it on hot. It looks absorbent enough that if I got out of the shower and threw it on, it would be nice. But this pattern is specifically for a border print. Now, obviously, the lighting keeps going weird on my camera. This is not a border print, but I might be painting my own border onto it. I'm feeling paint-ish right now. By the time I get to that step, I might change my mind, but right now I'm feeling like I'm gonna paint my own border on it. But I need to get everything cut out first. So, I need to go ahead and get started. I'm having a frustrated morning. Just, you know, total side note here. Several months ago, I bought a FAF 130. It's an old one. It's needed to be reworked, and I'm in the process of reworking it right now. It had all the books and attachments and everything with it. I put all those in a box and put it in a safe place, which apparently, as I've read, is an incantation that you say over something when you want it to go to an alternate timeline where it will be held in a safe place forever. And I cannot find it. I can't find it. I've been looking all over the place, so that's my frustration this morning. Hopefully, eventually, I will. But until then, I'm going to cut this out and let the little goblins that took my box of FAF attachments away and let them bring it back. So let me get started. Okay, so I've got it cut out. It's basically two very long, very large pieces and then a bunch of facings for the view I'm doing. There's a option that has a ruffle around the neckline. I'm not doing that. I think that if it was sheer, if my fabric was thinner, that would be nice, but I just don't want to do that right now. So I'm omitting those. Now, the length of this is for a very long length. I am a lot shorter than these models. It has the length down here. For the size I'm cutting out, it says it's 52 1/4 inches. I held up my tape, you know, at 52 1/4 inches, held it up to myself in the mirror, and I've decided I'm going to shorten it by about 4 inches, more or less. I want to be able to move around fairly easily. So that's what I'm going to do first. Let me move all these facing pieces away, grab my big old caftan. We are officially calling it caftan, and put those up here, and we will shorten those pieces. Okay, so for these pieces, this one is the front. Oh my goodness, can I raise you up so you have a better view? This is the front. It has the V-neck over here, and this line here is for lengthening and shortening. Now, the bottom of this dart goes about 1 inch below this line. So whatever I shorten this to, this mark might disappear. I'm going to need to make sure that I still have a bottom line here about 1 inch below it. So if I'm going to shorten this by 2 inches, I have my pattern upside down right now. And I mean, if I'm going to shorten it by 4 inches, I'm going to fold it 2. So I've got my ruler here, my 2-inch ruler, and in place just so I can make a nice fold on that lengthen and shorten here line or thereabouts. And that looks pretty good. I'm going to put my ruler on the top now. Fold it back this way. And that should give me a shortening of about 4 inches. Okay, so let me pull this ruler out here real quick. Just double check that it's fairly uniform all the way across, and it is. And I'm going to put a couple pieces of tape. I'm looking at the back side here. Over here and here, and let me flip it over to the right side, and I'm going to put a piece of tape way over here at the edge. You cannot see that, but way over here at the edge, because I'm going to need to blend that in. So if I put my ruler here, and I am kind of continuing this line, but put it up towards the very top corner. That's about where that is. That's going to be my new cutting line. So, just going to even this out a bit. And it's not exact. Technically, if I was going to be exact on this, I would have drawn this line according to the very bottom and all that, but this is close enough. Okay, so now that that is done, I need to redraw this little dart line here that I shortened out of existence. So I'm going to put a piece of tape right next to it. And that line was, this is the line here for my size. I'm doing size 16. I'm just going to draw that line, put a circle at the bottom, and that is good. Now, this here is where the elastic is going to be. And let's look at the pattern here. It looks like that elastic is very high, right underneath the bosom. And because, you know, me, age, gravity, etc., I am actually going to move this casing line down. You know what, I'm going to move it down a little extra. I'm going to move it down so it is in line with the bottom here of this lengthen and shorten line. So you just put another piece of tape here to hold it. And getting my ruler, I can see that this is 1 inch wide. Okay, this casing line. So what I'm going to do, this is the edge for my size. I am just going to draw it here, put a little dot, cross this off so I don't confuse the issue there, and draw a line straight across here. I think I ran out of ink or something at the 1 inch. And so this is going to be my new casing placement. I am going to do the exact same thing to the back piece where I shorten it by 4 inches. I do not think, no, there is a stitching line in the back. This is the back piece. There is a stitching line here too. So I'm going to do everything the same from the back as the front. Shorten it 4 inches, make sure I extend this line 1 inch below it and move my entire casing down 2 inches. Hello, I am trying to cut this out and I'm having a decision to make, and I just thought I would share this with you. So the thing is that because this is made for a border print, and I think they have you cut it the same way for these too, they want, instead of like if your length of your fabric goes this way, usually you put your pieces going the same direction. This one, they want you to put them crosswise, just so if you have a border print, this print can go down the side, okay? So, according to my estimation, that's the only reason they have it that way. It's not that it'll hang better or anything. If you're using a woven, it might even hang better if you flip it the conventional way. But my dilemma is that, well, first of all, if you're doing the long one, you need to have a fabric, and you're doing it their way, you need to have a fabric that is at least as wide as the length you want, okay? So you couldn't make this out of a 45-inch wide fabric if it was a border print, so you'd need a 60-inch wide or something. But my fabric, because it is home dec, like I said, it has this little pattern woven into it. You know, it's very light, you know, it's a very light fabric. It's an all cotton kind of fabric. And I've got to figure out why the lighting is so weird on my camera today. But anyhow, I don't want this pattern going sideways. I want it going up and down, okay? Just because I think that it would really bother me if I was wearing it and I was constantly seeing, it's like a little flower motif, that was sideways instead of up and down. So I'm going to disregard their instructions by placing it sideways, since this does not have a border print printed on it, and I'm going to go ahead and just cut it the lengthwise conventional way. So there you go. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm trying to move my camera so I can show you what I'm talking about here. These caftan pieces are very wide, and I am using a home dec fabric. I think it's 54 inches across, so it's not quite 60. If you were using a 60-inch wide, this probably would not be an issue for you, but it is for me. So what I'm going to be doing is two things. First, instead of cutting, this is perfectly straight going down the front. This is the cutting line here that's dark. I'm going to cut this on the fold instead of cutting two separate front pieces. That's going to save me a little bit of fabric. So I'm going to come down here, make sure my top part is below the edge, and where the little dot is here, that should line up with my fold line. Okay, that should be 5/8 of an inch in. So I'm just going to go ahead and stick a little pin there just to hold that in place. And put one more down just a little bit below, again trying to make it about so that the cutting line is about 5/8 of an inch outside of my fold line. Okay, I'm just going to do that just to hold it in place. So if I do that, I'm going to put my little neckline up here. If you can see right here, this corner of my sleeve is sticking out about 3 inches from the edge. This is the selvage edges here. So I'm going to shorten this so that I can make it all fit. This is a massive, massive piece. I don't think having this big old honkin' sleeve a few inches shorter is going to make a huge difference. I am just folding it over so that the bottom of this fold, which you cannot see, so this dot down here is the bottom opening. I am going to put a pin down there to hold it in place where it needs to be. Okay, And just make a fold somewhere above that dot over. Okay, so that is folded first. Then up here at the top, I'm going to stick my ruler, because remember I need to take 3 inches off. So I'm going to stick my ruler here at 1.5 inches and kind of up here. So up here, it's the right distance. Yes, that does fit. And just kind of taper out that fold so by the time I get to the bottom, it is perfectly invisible. It just disappears. Okay, so let me move the camera down so you can see. So at this point down here, the fold has disappeared. Up here, it is 1.5 inches, okay? And in that way, I can just cut it out, you know, so I don't have to worry about doing anything extra. And what I'm also going to do is from this point, I'm going to draw a line on my fabric with my heat erasable pen to the edge here. And that's going to be my cutting line for the top. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I will be doing the same. This is the front piece. I will be doing the same thing for the back piece. Okay, so I've got everything cut out. Basically, I have a front facing and a back facing, both cut on fold, which will conveniently match up with my caftan pieces now cut on a fold. There is this is a tie. This is the little string tie that's going to go through our casing. There's 2 of those cut, and there is the little casing that the elastic is going to go through. Okay, there's 2 of those cut. These 2 need to be interfaced. So let me go get my lightweight interfacing. Of course, I am using my very typical interfacing. This is not the only one I have, by the way. I probably have about 15 different interfacings. It just works so well on so many things, you know. I just keep grabbing for it. So I'm going to cut out one of each of these on fold. Okay, so with everything cut out, I've got my interfacing fused to my little front and back facing pieces. You don't need to see that. You've seen it 100 times. I'm going to go ahead and get started with the construction here. And the first thing I need to do is mark my pieces. And again, what I do to this piece, which is the back, I will also be doing to the front piece. So they're going to have us put this little strip on first. But while I'm marking that, I'm going to go ahead and mark for my stitching line, which I don't even know what that stitching line is for, honestly. But you know what? We're going to mark it anyway. So, as always, I have my little piece of leather and my hole punch. And I'm going to stick it underneath my tissue paper. I can lift up my pattern here. And I'm going to start down here, where I'm going to create a circle at the top and bottom of my new casing. So I've got those punched, and I'm going to come over here and punch out the top and bottom of my little stitching line. And this is cut on a fold, so basically I'm going to mark one side, flip it over, and then mark the other side. I get my heat erasable pen and draw those circles right through my tissue paper here. Okay, so let me pull this down. So what I have here are these 2 lines. I'm going to draw a line and connect here. Okay, and I have these 2 lines here. Now, I'm not actually going to draw the lines going straight across until I have them marked on the opposite side, and that way I can connect this dot to the one over there. Okay, so this is one stitching line, the other stitching line over here. I got my 2 dots, and now I have it opened up flat, so I can go ahead and draw the stitching line to connect those 2 dots here. And you know what, I'm going to give myself a guideline with the 1 inch line here, just to make sure it's perfectly straight. There. Okay, so this is my casing, 2 stitching lines. I'm going to go ahead and serge around the edges of this, basically just using my serger, trying not to cut much of anything off, but just going around all of the edges to keep it from fraying as I'm working on it. Look, I found the box. I was just sitting here doing my thing, and all of a sudden it came to me exactly where I had put it. I am so happy. I just thought I would share that with you. The Pfaff accessories and books have been found. Marking my front piece here now with the V-neck, and the only difference is that the front has a little buttonhole marking here, which is going to be the little buttonhole we're going to make for the drawstring thing to come through. So that needs to get marked also, but other than that, it's exactly the same as for the back. So I really should look forward to see what this stitching line is, but I'm having a thought that I might need to move it up or down. Well, hang on, that's not the right page. The stitching line seems to be where they're making the arms. So everything above this stitching line here is bodice and sleeve, and everything below it is skirt, and everything outside of it is just flap, you know. I was thinking if it had anything to do with this line, since I lowered this one, I might have to lower that also. But my armpit has not dropped. That part of me remains constant, so I think that that is fine. This just has to do with, you know, bust droppage here. So I'm going to leave this stitching line where it is. Now that I have my front and back pieces prepared, I'm going to start working on piece number 3, which is called the casing. So once again, I'm going to be transferring over dots. Am I going to transfer over dots? Honestly, these are kind of self-explanatory. These dots are 5/8 of an inch in, all right? And what they're going to have us do is, you've got 2 pieces here. And they're going to have you go over and fold under 5/8 of an inch, I believe. Yes. So I'm not going to transfer those dots. I'm just going to kind of draw where I want this fold line to be so that it's easier when I get over to the ironing board and I don't have to guess. But basically, for each one of these pieces, you know, pick your right side and your wrong side. I think I'm going to pick this as my wrong side. You're going to fold under and press each of the sides lengthwise, 5/8 of an inch in, and the ends. So when you're done, it'll all be folded underneath. And that's going to be the casing that we're going to sew on. I'm kind of concerned that it's going to be really bulky though, because the weight of the fabric that I'm using. So I need to end up with a piece that is 1 inch wide. And this just looks like there's going to be a whole lot of stuff in there when you consider that I'm also going to have to be pulling a tie and putting elastic through here. I'm going to see if I can find a piece of bias tape that I already have that I can use instead of this. All right, I found a couple pieces of bias tape. First of all, yes, it is wider. The pattern wants me to end up with a piece that is 1 inch wide. Well, this is wider than that, obviously, but I think that's going to be okay as long as I line up the top of my edge where the top is. The bottom can be a little bit lower. It's a caftan, you know, we can be creative here. And yes, one of them is going to be a slightly different color than the other. Again, they are going to be inside, so no one's going to see. So I'm just going to get my scissors that I left over here and trim them down so that they are the right size here. I do need to go ahead and fold under the outside edge, so I will fold that under 5/8 of an inch and press it, and then pin this onto my piece. Okay, so I have my little edges folded under. I'm going to go ahead and try to line up the top of my bias tape here with the top line that I wanted. Like this, pin it in place, and again, this is the back piece. It's going to be exactly the same for the front. I'm going to go to my sewing machine and edge stitch it along the very top and along the very bottom. Great, so I'm really excited about this next step because it is making buttonholes. And you know, there's nothing I love more than a vintage buttonholer. And I have a very, very exciting one today because one of my very lovely viewers sent me a buttonholer that's made for a high shank machine, which is what my Meister is, and I had never been able to find a high shank buttonholer. And this thing looks brand new. So I'm really excited because I'm going to use my Meister with my brand new buttonholer to make these two little buttonholes here. Now, remember these are the lines for the casing as came from the pattern. The one that I'm going to be using is this, you know, vintage and used bias tape here that's 2 inches wide, so I have a longer space to make my buttonhole. And the one that you can see, that's only like a 1/2 inch buttonhole, and if I was using a very thin Georgette type of a gauze fabric like they say in the pattern, that would probably be fine. But since I am using a thicker cotton fabric, I need a wider buttonhole, so it's all going to work out well together. But this fabric does fray very easily. So what I'm going to do is just take a piece of and this is the wrong side of my fabric here, okay? I'm just going to take a piece of my very lightweight interfacing. I just was looking at it. It's like, oh my gosh, I cut my motif upside down. Do you see that? These are little flowers. This is actually the top here with the neckline. I cut it upside down, but that's okay. No one will care. No one will care. Okay, but I'm going to fuse my little scrap of lightweight interfacing on here. Once that's fused on, I'll have to redraw the top line and these 2 lines so I have a starting point on where to fuse or where to start sewing my button holes. And yeah, we'll take it from there. I just ran over to the ironing board to fuse that on, and I'm looking at my V neckline. And they don't call for stay stitching or anything on here, but at least on my fabric, it looks like, because mine it's bulky, but it's not super tightly woven, I think I might go ahead and just fuse a couple pieces of a stay tape on there really quickly, just to make sure, because it is cut on a bias, that it does not want to spread open. So what I am going to use is this 1 inch fusible tricot. It's lightweight, but it's enough to keep it from wanting to stretch out of shape. I don't even know if it's already stretched out of shape or not, but it'll keep it from stretching anymore, I would say. So let me just go ahead and press it on. It is fusible on the one side. Okay, now that that side is done, I'm going to clip it straight here. This piece is not quite long enough. Well, you know what? We're going to make it make do. I'm just going to bring it down here and up to, you can't quite tell, but it's a couple inches short. This is my main concern right here, so I'm just going to go ahead and fuse that on there. And like I said, it's very, very soft, very lightweight, so it's not going to add any, you know, stiffness or bulk or anything. I just don't want this V to stretch out of shape and come open down here, okay? So with that done, with my little square fused on, I'm going to go ahead and redraw these lines and then head to my machine. Well, unfortunately, I'm having a hard time getting this buttonholer to work. The part that makes it go back and forth is not doing its thing right now. I'm sure I can fix it. I just need to spend some time with it. And I'm just feeling a little too impatient right now to work on that. So I'm going to set this one aside, figure out a different method for my little drawstring ties, and I'll come back to this off camera another day, get it ready so that next time I need to use it, it'll be ready to go. But again, I'm excited about it. All of these things can be fixed. It's just a matter of figuring out which little part is asleep or being obstinate, and you know, it's just a mechanical thing, so I can fix that. And I am thinking that I'm going to use grommets. I have some big grommets that I can pull drawstrings through, and that'll be really easy. So I'm thinking that's what I'm going to do on these two little places right here. Okay, so I'm over here at my grommet puncher setter, and I'm going to be using a larger size grommet today. They have a center that's almost half an inch wide, so that's going to be handy. So the first thing I'm going to do is punch out the little circles where my grommet's going to be set. Let's see here. I'm just going to set it here. I'm going to punch the circle slightly lower than where the top of the buttonhole would be, where that little cross point is. So I'm just going to center that on here and punch down. And do the same thing over on this side. Okay. Now let me get my scissors. It should have started most of a circle being punched out. I'm just going to finish it because there's a couple threads that did not punch out all the way. And if they're not exactly on center, that's okay. This doesn't have to be super precise there. Okay, so now, remember this is the wrong side that I'm looking at. So I'm going to set my grommet, the fatter part, on the right side, punch the little brass circle up. And then it's a two-part system, so then I take the little ring, here it is, the little ring. I'm going to set that over it and set the whole thing back underneath here carefully and punch it down. And there you go. Let me go ahead and do the other one real quick, and I'll show you what they look like. Okay, so now on the outside, this is what it looks like. On the inside, this is what it looks like, which I think will be fine. They look very secure. Happy with that. I think it'll be good for pulling a drawstring through. Okay, so now that I have my little holes, buttonholes, whatever you're going to do on here, I need to sew my casing on. And again, my bias tape is wider than this. It's wider, but that's okay. It'll actually make it easier for me. So I'm just going to kind of match up my corners and pin it into place here. Make sure your holes are inside where your bias tape is. That's important. And now I want to introduce you to the machine of the day. This is Rose. A while back, last year sometime, I don't even remember which project it was, but I was making a garment, ran downstairs to get something, and I found her on the back of a shelf. And she was, you know, in very sorry shape at that point. I have since remade her, repainted her, rebuilt her, and everything like that. And she is going to be the main sewer today. So she is a shuttle machine. She uses the long shuttle bobbins, which go back and forth in here. Well, I don't know if I can do this with one hand, but in here you can see the little shuttle that goes back and forth. They're lovely. They're really a lot of fun. Don't be afraid of them. They're actually easier, I think, than a regular round bobbin machine. But I'm going to go ahead and get my fabric set up, my camera set up on a little stand so you can see her sewing. Okay, so I am just going to pull my garment up, get it set in place here. I am not sewing the ends, just the long section, okay? So I'm going to go, she does not have reverse, so I'm just putting a couple stitches in forward, lift the lever, move her back, and go over that. And there you go, sewing just down the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and do that down both of these sides, leaving the ends open. Realized I didn't say what Rose is. Rose is a Goodrich bee, and she was made around 1908 is the nearest I can tell. Goodrich bee is her model, and the company is Foley and Williams Manufacturing Company of Chicago and Cincinnati. There was a lot of sewing machine manufacture being done in Ohio and in the Chicago area, turn of the century-ish time, so it's too bad it's not there anymore, but there you go. She sews a beautiful little seam, very strong, very straight. Let's see if I can lift this up. You can see a sweet little seam. So I was just going along, everything's fine, and I felt a little tug. I gotta show you, my grommet got caught on the edge of my box, and the weight was enough to pull it out. Ugh, this is driving me nuts, these things. I think what I'm gonna do is just pull this out the rest of, or you know what, no, I'm not going to pull it out the rest of the way. That would be an even bigger mistake. I'm just going to get a needle and thread and basically make a buttonhole stitch with a heavy thread around both of these where I can grab more fabrics. This stuff just wants to unravel on me. And I think that that's going to hold it in place, and then I'll come back and finish stitching it down. So that's my day. Starting with this one, I just have it knotted on the back and bring it up here on the outside, just so I have a place to start. And I'm going to do another stitch down right next to that and come the tip of my needle up in the middle, wrap the thread around it, pull it, and pull it down so the little slip knot type thing is going towards the outside, and then do that again. Wrap it around, pull my thread through, and then pull it down. If you can see, I'm making these little loop on the outside. You could do it on the inside too, but I think that it's going to work better along the outside. So there's two schools of thought. You can go very tightly all the way around, or you can go loosely around and then make a second pass. That's kind of what I did here. I went loosely around and made a second pass. I think this time I'm going to try to just make it more uniform the first time. You know, you do you, it'll all get covered one way or another. And when I'm taking my stitches on the outside, I am starting about between a 1/16 and an 1/8 of an inch away from my little grommet, because that's going to give me a little more meat to bite into before the metal part. You know, it should make it a little bit stronger. So anyhow, that is it. If I run out of thread halfway through, I'll just knot up a new one and keep on going after I tie it off. Okay, so here I have finished this second one, and I am just on the wrong side making, if I can get this in here, a few little back stitches, two one way, one another direction to lock it in. Pull it tight and clip the thread off. And now, finally, I am done. So there's my little grommet with my little buttonhole stitches around it. That feels very secure. Sorry about that to me. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish stitching my tape down and then do the tape on the back side. Okay, so next the pattern comes with a elastic guide piece. So I need to, it says only cut one, so that's fine. I'm going to cut one according to this guide here, and this is going to get threaded through my casing. I've got my little bodkin. I'm just going to attach it to the end of my elastic here. I'm just working on my back piece. The front piece uses the tie. The back one has this elastic here. So I'm going to, because my casing is so wide, this is very easy, as you can see, slide my little bodkin through here, out this side, and it says I need to leave the ends of the elastic sticking out about 5/8 of an inch. That's what it says. I'm just going to stick a little pin here to hold that in place so it doesn't get sucked in. And the same thing on this side, pull it so that this is sticking out about 5/8 of an inch. Put another pin over here to hold it. And now I can pull my bodkin off, pop it up where I know where it is, not somewhere safe. Okay, so now I need to stitch along the outside. So they show the little ends of the elastic peeking out, but I'm going to make some edge stitches this way. That's going to lock that elastic in, and I think I'm just leaving them that way. It doesn't look like they want us to trim them off, so I'm going to make those two, and I will be right back. Okay, so that is stitched in. So now I'm going to turn this piece right side up, go get my front, place it right side down, and match up and stitch. What is that mark there? I don't know what that is. It looks like, hope it's not oil. Anyway, match up and stitch my shoulder seams. Okay, so with my right side down, get my pins over here. I'm just going to start one at the top, one at the bottom. Remember, I shortened these sleeves by 3 inches, so yours might be longer. And go ahead and make a regular straight stitch at 5/8 of an inch here, and then press that seam allowance open. So with that done, I'm going to get my facing pieces out here and put them together. I need to put my shoulders together, sew them at 5/8 of an inch, and press the seam allowances open. Once I get that done, I'm going to come back and serge around the outside edge just to finish it off so it doesn't fray. Okay, so this is what it looks like now. I've got it serged around the edges, pressed open. I'm going to go get my big old piece that I've been working on so I can get my neckline matched up. So with my big old massive outfit here, I'm putting it face up, get my facing, put it face down. I'm going to start out by matching up my shoulder seams. Pin this on this side, same over here, on this side. And matching up my center bottom of my V. That looks about right. I'm having trouble grabbing my pins today for some reason. Okay, so let me go ahead and just spread it out and pin together everything in between, which should hopefully match up well. I'm going to, down here at the V, I'm going to draw the stitch line because it really helps me to be able to get an accurate V bottom here. So I'm just lining up the edge with 5/8 of an inch, drawing down here, and on this side lining it up to 5/8 of an inch, and drawing it there. The rest of it I can use the edge as a guide, but this way I have a definite point right here where I need to leave my needle down and make that turn. I just took a quick glance at the instructions and realized they wanted you to sew that neck facing with a 3/8 of an inch seam. I did it with a 5/8. I honestly don't think it makes that big of a deal. So I'm not going to worry about the difference there. But it is sewn all the way around like this. I am going to need to understitch it. So before I understitch it, I need to come in and clip around all of these curves, especially this back area. I've got a lot of thickness going on here, so I'm going to be grading this too. But first, anywhere there's a curve, I am clipping to within about 1/8 of an inch of the seam line. Down here at the bottom, I am clipping all the way up to, but not through, that center point at the bottom, okay? So that's gonna open up flat. Where my seams are, my shoulder seams, I've got a lot of thickness there, so I'm actually gonna just trim one layer of it out because I am gonna be understitching. There's gonna be a second layer of stitching there, so I think it'll, even though this frays a lot, I think it'll be okay. So let me just trim this side here. I know it's not very delicate, but it will work. Okay, so I'm going to need to understitch towards the facing. So when I open up my facing like this, the seam allowance is going towards the facing this way, okay? So when I'm going to sew it, I'm going to look at it from this direction, okay? But underneath there, I can feel where the thickness is to make sure it stays over there. And my understitching is going to be, again, right on this side of this seam on top of all of this down below. So I'm going to do that all the way around the neckline. Right, so I've got the understitching done here, as you can see, and now I'm going to fold the facing in to the inside edge, and the understitching should hopefully give it a nice turn here so that you don't see any stitching. I am looking to see if I need to grade it. Very thick around my shoulders, but to me it looks like once I press it, it's going to be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and press this whole neckline, see what it looks like, and then I'll come back and tack down my shoulders. So I've ironed it, it did flatten out nicely, so I'm happy with this neckline. What I need to do now is come in here on the inside, and with a needle and thread, I am just going to sew the facing to the seam allowances here on both of the shoulders, just to keep it wanting to stay tucked in. All right, I want to show you what she looks like right now. I just have it pinned at the sides where I think those stitching lines are, but I have them actually marked on the wrong side, so it's hard to tell. But you get an idea where this is just a like flap area. This, from the shoulder, I have my hand on my shoulder, I can pull it out. So this is the sleeve, and then it's open down below. But it's kind of interesting. I'm kind of digging the grooviness of it. So what my plan is at this point, while it is still open, is I'm going to be painting her. And I believe at this point, this is my plan, I am going to be doing flowers around the neckline and from the bottom coming up, you know, I haven't decided exactly, maybe on stems, I don't know, but I'm going to do some flowers around the bottom, kind of like a border print, but also around here. I'm not going to do anything around the neckline or around the waist because that's where the tie is going to be in the front. You know, it's going to be kind of green, kind of nature queen dress, I'm going to call her. My nature caftan. Anyhow, here she is. I'm going to go ahead and take her off, put her on my table and get my paints out. I'll just show you a little bit of me painting her because, you know, you don't need to see all of that, but it's a fun process. So just to show you what I'm thinking, I just pulled up this little image here. Don't know if it's going to let me show the whole thing. And I kind of like that. I think I'm going to try to do something similar to this idea. So it won't be exact, of course, because I'm kind of freehanding it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my heat erasable pen and kind of sketch it. And I'm going to want the bottom to be pretty high. I'm probably going to draw it to be, at least 18 inches tall coming up from the bottom. And I'll give a basic outline of where the stems and leaves will be. And then from that point, once I get all of that in, then I can come back with the different colors and make the flowers. Okay, so I have it roughly drawn on here, and move all my stuff. If you can see, I've got little stems and things and leaves drawn on here. It's not entirely on there, but it's enough I can kind of follow it if I'm looking at the picture. Because paint does bleed through fabric, I just have this sheet of blue here that I've had floating around my sewing room. I'm going to put that on the bottom so that when paint seeps through, it doesn't get onto my sewing table, because that would be bad. So I'm just going to do enough that I can just work on top of the blue, pull that off, you know, wipe this down, and then reposition it on the next part. So this might take me a little bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is just mix up some greens. I've got a dark green, a apple green, a silver, and I'm just going to make up some various greens because, you know, in the garden there aren't exact matches of everything being the same shade. All right, I wanted to show you that I've got my leaves all painted. This is actually the front. I've already done the back, but you will have to wait and see that because it's hanging off the other side of the table. But I am just using my, you know, cheapy little acrylic craft paints, but I can tell you that they will stay on the fabric very well. Those pants I painted a while back, where I painted the yoke and everything, those have gone through the wash many, many times, and the paint is still there. You know, it might not be as vibrant as it was in the beginning, but it's still there. I'm still getting compliments on it, so there you go. So these leaves are on. You can see I've kind of roughly traced on where the flowers are, and if I click my screen, this is roughly what I am going for here. You know, not exactly. I think I skipped this flower because I ran out of room. But my colors aren't exact, but you know what? It's a rough guide, so I have something to look at as I go. So I can tell you that it seems like you need to water your paints down quite a bit for it to want to soak into the fabric. If you use them full thickness, without it being thinned out with water, it just sits on top and everything. So I keep forgetting to turn on the camera, so you know, I will just kind of give you a brief update. I just kind of keep mixing colors and filling in where I think it looks pretty. They're flowers, so you can be as creative as you want to, and if they start looking really far out, like psychedelic type flowers, you know, that's kind of what goes along with the whole boho caftan-y type theme too, so I think that that's okay. But I think I'm at the point where if I just keep playing with it, I'm just going to make it weird. So I'm going to call this good. I'm having debates right now about if I'm going to do the neckline or not. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and hang this up on my dress form, let it dry completely, and then maybe tonight I'll come back, take a look at it, and see if the neckline is calling to me. If not, then we'll just go ahead and finish sewing. Good morning. Well, it is the next day, and I wanted to show you, this is the front, you know, just simple. I wasn't going for super elaborate. And this is the back. Hang on. This is the back. So, you know, they're just kind of different, just little flowers, nothing too fancy. I don't think I'm going to go around the collar. I think I'm going to leave the collar plain. The neckline up here, I think I'm going to leave it plain. I think that would be just fine. I'm really feeling the vibes of early morning, sipping coffee, walking around and watering the garden type of an outfit here. You know, because that's what it is this morning. So I'm just going to go ahead, move my camera over to its correct position, and get started sewing up the sides and doing the final construction. So on the sides, I've got these folded right sides together. Up here is the shoulder seam, and there is a dot right about here, which is, I don't know, maybe a little more than a foot from the top, and there is a dot down here just before the curve. All right, they want you to sew on the side seams between these two dots and press it open. Okay, so I've got my side seams put in and my seam allowance is pressed open. So what I need to do now is hem up around the sleeve, well, not sleeve, the armhole area, and the bottom. So what I'm going to do get my voluminous fabric here, throw my pen on the floor. Okay, I'm just going to be making a narrow hem. So basically at 5/8 of an inch, if I press that down, I'm just going to tuck it in underneath and pin that. And I am going to be using my machine to make a little narrow hem, so I'll just be sewing along the edge. I'm going to do this same thing up around the armhole. And I have got to say that my little Rose machine is doing such a nice job. She is sewing so sweetly. The shuttle machines, I love them. When you sew with a regular bobbin machine, the needle goes dunk, 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 you know? Basic. With the shuttle machine, it's like they're skipping down the road. They go dunk, da dunk, dunk, da dunk, dunk, da dunk. And it's just fun. It's like she's just skipping along. So anyway, she's sewing very smoothly, and I'm really happy about that because, you know, they need to get used. So she's happy. So anyway, I'm going to finish pinning this up. I might give it a quick press, and then I'm going to edge stitch it here all the way around both of the bottoms and the armholes. Now I want to show you, I am hemming up the sleeve, or sorry, steady my camera here. I am sleeving up the armhole area, and you know, because this is fairly thick fabric, I'm going to have a lot of bulk in here if I make a narrow hem over that. So what I'm going to do is fold it, press really hard where that fold is. Again, that's at about 5/8 of an inch. And then get my scissors and come in here, and I am going to trim out most of that seam allowance. I'll leave about 1/8 of an inch or so in there. Okay, and now I can fold it up and tuck it in, and it is so much thinner. It's going to lay a lot flatter, and so I'm happy with that. Okay, so I've got all my hems done. Now this is the little slit area at the bottom of the hem, but it's the same on both sides. When you come up, you're going to cut over and then come down, or you can just do both and then do a bar tack across, which is what I did because I just wanted to pin them one at a time. That way, that helps reinforce this and make sure it's not going to want to split up for any reason, but you can do that at the bottom of the armhole and at the top of the little side opening. Okay, so I am looking at the right side, and I have just transferred these two little dots over by just placing my tissue paper on top of here. And the back side has elastic in it already, so make sure that you get the edge. This is my underarm and everything here. Get that lined up and smooth it this direction, because you're not going to be able to do it that way because of all of this from the elastic underneath. But once I have that in place, I'm going to put a few pins right over where this stitching line is, so that when I go to my sewing machine, no matter how I wad this up while I'm carrying it over there, I will be able to sew this little, and it's only maybe about 6 inches long, but sew this, you know, back tack at the ends on both sides. Okay, we are almost done. So the last thing is to get the tie. So there are 2 pieces here, and what I need to do is fold them in half lengthwise here with the right side on the inside. I'm honestly not really sure what the right side is on this. I don't know if it matters for a tie. And I'm going to sew it at a 5/8 inch seam allowance, leaving one side open. The first side I'm going to sew 5/8 here, turn and come in this way and do 5/8 all the way down. But they want you to leave this side open for turning. And it's about 1 yard long, so I think we'll be able to turn that. What I'm going to do is actually sew this at the 5/8 and then come back and serge it fairly close to that so that I don't have the bulk of a big seam allowance in there when I'm turning it. Now, you may say, well, why don't you just serge it and not sew it? If my fabric was not one that wanted to unravel so easily, I might. But because my serging seam is only about 1/8 of an inch wide, if I just serge this, there's a good chance that while I'm tugging it to turn it right side out, it's going to unravel and explode on me. And I just don't want to deal with that right now. And one last little look at my little rose machine here as I finish up sewing. I think that it's nice to work on a treadle. No, you don't have the motors and everything, but honestly, you can get a pretty good speed on a treadle machine. And I'm not saying that you need to buy one from me at all, but I'm saying there's something nice and kind of intuitive about working on one, especially next to a window, so you're using natural light. It's just a simple pleasure. So anyhow, I am going to be using my little lobster claw loop turner on this. If you haven't seen it before, this is it. It has a rounded side and a pointy side. Okay, so I'm going to feed my whole loop onto my rounded side. This is very thick cotton fabric here, but you know, that's what I wanted, so it's all good. Turning your loop will be a lot easier if you use something thinner, but that's okay. All right, so then I get it up to the end. Again, this is my rounded side. I'm gonna close it up. Getting it started is the hardest part, just sliding all of this stuff up over to get it started coming through while holding the bottom closed, of course. Okay, just about there. And then once that's started, you can just kind of start sliding the fabric over it. Do it with this hand maybe, all the way down so you can see I'm just kind of pulling it over. And again, this is very thick, which is why I trimmed that seam allowance and serged it, because, you know, I would have little threads coming out all over the place. So I've got it pushed all the way, so I have a little nub here. I can open it up and pull it off like a very funky caterpillar. Okay, and I just hold on to my little nub and there you go, and slide all of this stuff right side out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and press these so they're nice and flat. Okay, so last step is I need to get these through here and out the side. So I think what I'm going to do is get one of these wire loop turners. It's got a tiny little hook at the end, okay? And I'm just going to do one side at a time. I'm feeding it through. Hang on, let me open this up here so I can feel when it comes through the end of the casing on the inside. And that is it. Okay, so on the inside here, I'm going to hook that to the closed end of my little tie. And hopefully, if all goes well, I should be able to fish that through. Ah, it came loose. Hang on a second. It's wanting to come loose before I can even get it in there. Okay, so I'm pulling it through and I get it up to this point so I can just reach through, and I'm just going to tug it through a little bit, okay? And the same for this side. Stick my hand on the inside so I can feel when the little hook comes out from my bias tape opening, this here. Put the end of my tie that is sewed shut on there and pull it carefully, slowly, up to the point where I can see it here. Okay. All right, I'm just tugging those through a little bit now. Let me go to the inside here. All right, that's the back. This is the front. Okay, I need to get this so it is only sticking out, you know, about 5/8 of an inch or so. So I'm just going to tug it from the right side until it's only peeking out about that much, and stick a pin in it and do the same thing for the other side. Then I'm going to come back and run a straight stitch here and probably just pink the edge off or even leave it. I think it'll be fine. But just do a straight stitch here to lock that in place. So I'm going to do that for both sides. Finally, it is done, and it's a comfy kind of exactly what I wanted. The caftan house dress, sauntering in the flower garden, you know, doing my thing. The only thing that could make this more perfect for the occasion is to put a couple pockets in the front. So, you know, if that's your thing and you want pockets, I would suggest patch pockets right here, because side pockets with this kind of stuff doesn't make much sense, but that would be nice. But, you know, after all of my stuff with my little grommets and everything like that, it actually worked out really well. It's very comfortable. I made it out of the heavier cotton fabric, but this way I can wear it out, and if the FedEx truck drives up the driveway, you know, I'm okay. I am covered. Whereas if it was a very sheer fabric or a very, very lightweight silky fabric, I might feel like I'm in my nightgown. So anyhow, I like it. Hope you liked it. I know it's kind of different, but you know, sometimes you need that, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Living my bucolic life, free healthy city strife. Horses, chicks, and dogs, they are my neighbors. I cook and sell and spin, and move the horses into the barn. Then time to move them out again. Red barns, green pastures, beautiful my houses. The view I see each day when I arise. This life pleases me, as it is plain to see. I'm living my bucolic life.